that people were thinking that they remembered things
Yeah,
from what happened,
exactly.
but they weren't actually remembering them. It was what they had heard, and that's what they genuinely thought that they had seen it, but they really hadn't.
Right, right. And that's how you can influence people's memories, just suggestion. You know, or show them a picture and say, remember when we were here? You know, you can implant memories that just never happened. And that's normal. That's just the way the human mind works. It's not like you're being necessarily fooled. It's your brain just trying to make sense of the information that it's given. And it's very bad at it for a lot of things. Well, that we got off track on that. This pretty much says the same thing we said in the other chart. It's just instead of the physical separation of the central and the peripheral, this one just sort of separates the motor and the sensory. Okay, and I'm not going to ask a lot of questions about anything specific about this kind of stuff, but by now just remember that your somatic motor system is the outside, you know, the peripheral nerves. That's the stuff you can control. Okay, that's a word you'll hear sometimes. Somatic. Somatization is when a patient tends to just complain about everything. Okay? Everything's wrong, everything hurts, everything won't work right. They call that somaticizing. Okay? Along with histrionics, you'll hear that word sometimes in doctor's records. But, the autonomic motor system is the involuntary one that runs the heart and the intestines, that sort of thing. And likewise, the somatic sensory is everything you're used to thinking of as sensory, pain, temperature, that sort of thing. The autonomic one is the one that receives information from the viscera, or the heart, or the intestines. When you feel pain, like a gas pain, okay, that's the autonomic sensory system that's sending that back to the brain. Okay, that's not a peripheral nerve. Okay, and they will even sense things that you're not aware of. You know, there are things in your blood nerves that will sense the pH of the tissues and the fluids. Like I said, they'll sense pressure and tension. Okay, so they kind of control the power of stomach contractions and things like that. It senses oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. Okay, that's all autonomic system. Okay, things that you're not aware of, but it's sensory. Okay. This one's not terribly important. I think you'll pick up this information as we go along. But I said this is a picture of the spinal cord. Okay. It's the central part. It looks like a little butterfly. This is what we call gray matter, and then you have white matter around it. Gray matter is where the bodies of the nerves live. Okay? They're only gray because the nuclei and the organelles in the cell give it a little darker color than these tracks out here, which are just axons. Okay? These tracks right here are going to be axons going up and down the cord, and back here in the dorsal columns the same way. But the nerve bodies live in what this little butterfly area here. Okay? This is called the anterior horn. This is the posterior horn. Anterior horn, the motor cells that go out to your skeletal muscles. Polio attacks the anterior horn of your spinal cord. That's why it paralyzes people. Okay? It causes these motor cells to die and you become paralyzed. I'm going to skip the chemistry and the discussion of it here. Let's see where we can go. Well, since we talked a little bit about the gut and the parasympathetic nervous system, you have what's called, it's a little separate from that, you have what's called the enteric nervous system. And this is sort of a self-timing, constricting nervous system that controls the rate of your GI system, okay? The way it works. Because you can actually cut the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nerve coming from the brain that controls the heart rate and the gut and that sort of thing. You know how when you get nervous, you get stomach butterflies, you get crampy. That's the vagus nerve that's doing that too. Okay? You cut that and you knock that out, but you're still going to get rhythmic contractions of the gut because it doesn't need the brain to work. It's like the gut of the worm. It has its own little brain. And hundreds, thousands maybe of these little ganglia nerves here that control contractions and pressure and things like that. Okay? And that's called the enteric nervous system. It's throughout the whole GI system. Okay? And I just want you to know that it exists. Okay? I'm not going to get real detailed on the questions and things like that. But I thought I'd show you one case where it goes wrong. Okay? This is a case that's Hirschsprung's disease. It's not too uncommon. I actually had a student in the last semester whose child had it. But you'll see this is a normal GI system here with normal nerves. When you lose that enteric nervous system, And this just happens to be a fairly common syndrome. The rectosigmoid is, you're born without the nerve to control that, so this is essentially blocked. The stool can't get through there. So when you look at the child on x-ray, you see all gas and everything building up in the intestines and causing distension. Okay? This has to be operated on, and they cut this part off right here and bring it out to a colostomy bag. Okay? Later, they'll sometimes try to reconnect it so the child can have normal bowel movements, but you've got to get rid of this problem first, or they're going to die of intestinal obstruction. Okay, so. You were shaking your head. Have you seen one before?
No, I've heard of it now.
Okay, okay.
My ex-boyfriend had Crohn's disease, and he had 70% of his intestines removed.
Yeah.
And he had to do the reverse.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of yucky.
But Crohn's is a little different. Crohn's is an inflammatory disorder, okay?
But he
Whereas,
still had a lot of it removed.
Oh, yeah.
Like his whole large intestines, colon is gone.
yeah. Crohn's is nasty that way.
Yeah.
High
So this is
incidence,
usually
high
detected when
incidence.
they're babies?
This, it's detected within a few hours of birth
Oh.
because they start distending. Okay? They're swallowing air, you're trying to feed them, and they're just blowing up. You can't go anywhere. Okay? So this is a newborn.
They get colostomies at newborn.
Oh yeah. But you got to fix this right away, or they're going to die. Okay? So. We've only got 2 minutes. I think I'll let it go at that.